Thank you very much, Ed. Keep us posted. In your morning headlines, today's sentencing is set to begin for the former Pilot Flying J president. It comes after Mark Hazelwood was convicted in a diesel fuel rebate scheme. WBIR 10 News reporter Yvonne Thomas joins us live from the Information Center with a look at what punishments he could face. Good morning.
Abby, good morning. The former Pilot Flying J president faces more than 10 years in federal prison for his role in cheating some customers of millions of dollars. A jury convicted Hazelwood in February of wire fraud, conspiracy to commit mail wire fraud, and witness tampering. The government showed he led a team that cheated some diesel fuel buyers out of some promised rebates. Lawyers for the prosecution and defense, though, have vastly different opinions on the punishment they think he should face. Prosecutors are recommending a sentence of 14 to 17 years along with a $750,000 fine. But the defense attorney thinks he should get a non-custodial sentence with home detention, or at most no more than 3 years. Hazelwood has been free on house arrest, ordered to stay close to his Knoxville area home since his conviction. Two co-defendants, Scott Wombold and Heather Jones, were also convicted in February, and they'll be sentenced later on this year. And